about faith to believe. It's about hope to receive. It's about love to give life. It's about transplant life with me, Ms. Vinnie. Please watch About Transplant Life TV every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. through Pasadena Media's channel on Spectrum Cable TV Channel 32, AT&T Uverse Cable Channel 99, or you can watch it live stream at pasadenamedia.org. Thanks for watching.
Say yes. For more information on how you can become a registered organ donor, please visit abouttransplantlife.com.
Hey everyone, it's Miss Vinnie, and we are live on Facebook. Y'all know we do this every Thursday. We go live on Facebook and we talk about transplant life. And I am so honored to be with you tonight. Thank you so much for joining me. We live on Facebook and I got friends. Who's out there? Let's see. Hey, George, my best friend George is here. I knew you would be there. Here we go, George. I just love you to pieces, George. Thank you for being here to encourage me. I am so glad you're here because tonight we're going to get some powerful information from my very special guest tonight. Her name is TENAYA WALLACE. And when I tell you, she knows everything about everything organ donation. And so she's the one I go to when I have any kind of questions about policies, about, whatever's going on behind the scenes. Queen TENAYA knows all about that. And I just ask her the tough questions. And she always seems to have the information. So, I made friends with TENAYA very quickly because I realized that she is smart. And I like having smart people around me, right? Hey, Tony. Tony's here. My wonderful son, Tony. Thank you for being so supportive. My friend Phyllis is here. Hey, Phyllis Casper. I just love you, Phyllis Casper. Now, you may not know this, Phyllis, but my guest tonight, TENAYA, she is the one that developed the ambassador program for One Legacy. I told you she was smart, right? And see, that's how Phyllis and I met. For 8 years, I served as a faithful and proud One Legacy ambassador. And that's how I met my dear friend Phyllis. So thank you so much for joining. You probably met TENAYA before, and you're going to see her in a whole new capacity tonight. So thank you for joining me. Good evening, Lisa Baxter, superstar kidney warrior from New York. Thank you for joining me. I'm so glad you're here. Hey, Sister Glenda Harris, happy Juneteenth. Yes, today is the day that, we celebrate, all kinds of good things. But, I like to say, that, I'm not bound by a piece of paper. My freedom was made when Jesus died on the cross at Calvary. And whom the Son sets free is free indeed. So I celebrate Christ today and every day. Sharing is caring, health is wealth. Welcome one and all. Hallelujah. We're here. We're live on Facebook. And so I am just so honored to have you guys here. We got a lot to talk about. I always leave the banners on, don't I? One of these days I'm gonna learn how to work this thing. But until then, I'm glad y'all patient with us, sister. We have a lot to talk about. But first and foremost, I want to celebrate my dear friend, and I know you guys who follow me on about Transplant Life and on my personal page have heard me talk about my dear friend Carolyn Faithlow. And here she is when I went to visit her while she was waiting for her heart transplant. And there she is post transplant. Carolyn received her second chance at life on Father's Day. On Sunday, June the 15th, she officially became a heart transplant recipient. And there she is recovering in ICU. And boy, it's just so good to see her on the other side, in victory. Her heart surgery went very well. And she had a lot to say when I went to visit her yesterday in ICU. And it was so emotional for me, you guys. Being a heart transplant recipient myself, 10 years ago, I had the same thing. As a matter of fact, I was in the same hospital several times, in and out of the hospital. But, to see her there, in the hospital, lying in the hospital bed, rejoicing, that the Lord had brought her through that battle, right? Because she talks about it. She had a lot to say yesterday, about the fight of faith. And that's what I tell you guys. You are not alone. God is a very present help in time of trouble. And she got to experience that for herself, right? And so I want to share with you a little clip of our visit yesterday. And I'm putting together a series of videos because we sat for 4 hours yesterday, and she was, very intimate, very transparent about her journey and some of the things that she experienced along the way. And I think that this is such valuable arsenal for us to have, um, to equip us to help others that may be on the same journey. That's what this is all about. Being on the other side, being a heart transplant recipient. I always want to give back, and many of us have the same sentiment. We want to give back. We want to help people. And so that's what this is all about. So watch this video right quick. It's going to bless you. Hey everyone, it's Miss Vinnie. I am here in ICU with my dear friend Carolyn Faithlow. We have to wear our masks to protect ourselves and protect one another, right? And she just had her life-saving heart transplant, and she's doing so well. So I am going to allow her to talk to you. Okay? Thank you for praying for her. She felt each and every prayer that went forth on her behalf. And so here she is. Hold on. Hi, Carolyn. Say hi to everybody.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for praying. First, to Jesus be all the glory. And I just want to thank everybody who prayed for me. Because, man, it took a lot. This was a major surgery, double dose, because they opened that cut. And that was a double dose. And I came a long way, the doctor said. Came a long way. The heart is working good. Everything is working perfectly, just the way God promised in His Word. All my organs working effectively.
Yes.
Nothing was wrong with any of my organs. Woo! To Jesus be all the glory. It was a fight, a faith fight.
Yeah.
This one, the devil fought me hard with this one, but Jesus said, God said, stop it.
I was trying not to cry, and I know I sound crazy in that video when I was talking through that mask. But it was so emotional being with her yesterday, and seeing her on the other side and knowing that I went through the exact same thing 10 years ago, right? I was the one in the bed with the tubes and the needles and the IVs and and the pumps, but now I'm on the other side and I'm able to help her. And that's what it's all about. and people out there who are afraid. You don't have to be afraid. I know it's difficult. You don't go through a transplant journey unless it's a life or death situation, right? It's serious business. And so we are obligated, to help one another. I just think it's the human thing to do. And so that is so powerful. So that's a 7-minute video, the very first one in a series of conversations with Carolyn. So please go to our YouTube channel about transplant life with Miss Vinnie, and you can watch that video in its entirety. It's really, really good. And we're live on Facebook. What y'all think about that? Yeah, the heart pillow, right? Yeah. Let me tell you something. Post transplant, that heart pillow is a valuable weapon, right? Because it helps you. You cough a lot, and you're required to cough. You got to cough up all the mucus and stuff. And yeah, them heart pillows are, yeah, they're serious. I signed hers too, Tony. Hey, Sadria Strong, my wonderful donate warriors from you're in Atlanta or near Georgia? I think so. Prayers, congratulations, and love to her. I just love me some Sadria Strong. She ain't playing with it. And yeah, so I want you guys to check it out on YouTube. I'm gonna do a whole series on just Carolyn and all of her, amazing stories about her incredible heart transplant journey. All right. Now, without any further ado, we about to get serious about some stuff. All right. I want to bring on board my wonderful friend Tenaya. Now, she recently paid a visit to our TV studio at Pasadena Media Studios, right? She and my wonderful friend Ava Kaufman. Look who's there at Pasadena Media. That's our studio. They're standing with the banner. And we take two powerful shows that are going to air in July, on July the 5th and July the 12th, live on Pasadena Media's cable television channels, and you can watch it live stream anywhere in the world. And we're going to give you more information about that. But Tenaya Wallace embodies excellence and professionalism. She is the transplant expert that we all turn to for advice. I got to say it right. I get excited and my tongue start moving faster than my brain. Tenaya is the former director of Donate Life Hollywood and the CEO of Crowd Advocacy. That's her company. And she knows everything about everything. So today we are going to sound the alarm on a very serious situation that could potentially cripple, listen to me now, organ donation and transplantation. And we're going to talk about it. So please welcome my dear friend, Tenaya Wallace.
So fun being here with you. I had so much fun filming our
Did,
show
did
together.
you?
That was
Yeah. It's just such a blessing to be able to create content, with a group of people that are serious about it, and it's a great opportunity for me. And everything that I know about editing and writing and producing, I learned at Pasadena Media. And so they call me their top producer, and I wear that badge proudly. And I don't know
they're
how.
great. They're so professional.
Yeah.
It was such a wonderful experience. The whole team there just did such a phenomenal job. And I'm so honored because I feel like most of your guests are transplant patients or even doctors or others. And I am an advocate, a donation advocate, but I'm not actually like personally touched by donation and transplant. So I'm excited that I get to be part of your community as well.
Girl, we need people like from the outside looking in, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you make yourself, you educate yourself on all things transplant and donation. You are an integral part of what happens behind the scenes, because we don't know about the function of an OPO. I didn't even know what OPO was. You
Mhm.
know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
didn't know the things that you are involved in, and everything you do, everything that you're a part of is so vitally significant to our being alive. We can't survive our transplant journey without people like you, you know,
Thank
because
you.
there's a business side to it as well
Yep.
as a
There
personal
is,
side.
and a policy side of it, which is what we're
Oh,
going to talk about.
the policy side. And see,
Policy.
people like me, you know, policy, what is that?
I
I
know.
wasn't even thinking about those things. I'm trying to breathe. You know what I mean? Each and every day, and when you're, in the hospital and stuff like that, you don't think about, the things that you're involved in behind the scenes. And so I appreciate you for taking the time to educate us on the things that we don't know. And there's a lot going on, right?
There is. There is.
You told me you were scared, and that really made my knees knock.
I know. I did say that. It's funny. I don't know if I had said that before out loud. And when you said, "Oh my God, if you're scared, that scares me,"
Yeah.
but I am, because I feel like the train is moving. Like the train left the station and it's moving. And there's pieces of policy that have gone into place that are set to go into action in 2026. And as much as I feel like the OPOs and the donation community is working, trying to get the federal government's attention and get CMS and the regulators and the agencies, the bureaucracies that deal with donation and transplantation to listen, I feel like they're not listening. And that is what scares me, because I look, I have a master's degree in public policy. I love public policy. I'm a policy nerd. I believe in the power of policy to help people. I believe that the government has the opportunity to make legislation that can save lives and help uplift people and make life better. I believe in that. And so when I see policymakers not listening to the experts in donation and transplant, but listening to outside forces who aren't telling the whole story and who aren't using science and data and good information to make policy, I also know that policy can really harm people if it's not created correctly. One of the things when I first started writing about this about a year and a half ago on LinkedIn, I talked a lot about unintended consequences of policy, because when I was in policy school at UCLA, that was one of the main things that they drilled into our minds was, when you don't have the right data going into the decision making, you will have a consequence to the policy that you did not intend, that you did not think about, that you did not consider. So you have to have really good information being put into the decision making. And if you don't, you're going to harm the wrong people. You're going to try to make, I don't think that the policymakers right now think, "Oh, I'm going to do this to harm transplant patients."
Mhm.
That's not
But
what
they
they're
are
doing.
thinking about the money, though, right?
I don't know. I honestly believe that people think that they're doing the right thing. They think that the donation and transplant system is broken because they were sold that idea by
Mm.
a group, by an individual, by the group called Organize. They were sold that idea. People are waiting. The OPOs aren't working. The system is broken. It's a very simple thing to tell someone. And then they were able to say the system is broken because people are waiting, and the organ procurement organizations are at fault. They're the problem. They're
Mm.
unregulated. They're monopolies. They're this, they're that. So that's the problem. That's what you need to solve. And it was such a simple, like, there's a problem, here's a solution, that policymakers and people in bureaucracies and senators of Iowa are like, okay, I'm in, I'm gonna help, I'm gonna save the day by by basically putting OPOs in under scrutiny. And I'm not saying that organ procurement organizations shouldn't have regulation, or that we shouldn't
Yeah.
have oversight, or that the government shouldn't have policies that make OPOs work better. Yeah, for sure. But when you put the wrong information into the policy, the consequence of this of CMS's final rule, which is the policy I'm most concerned about, the CMS final rule about organ
Tell us
donation.
what CMS is.
It's the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So essentially, if you get any kind of Medicare or Medicaid benefits, they're the agency, they're a huge agency in the federal government. They're the ones who pay the bills. So if your heart transplant was paid by Medicare and Medicaid, CMS pays the bills. And because so many transplants are actually covered by Medicare and Medicaid, it was left up to CMS to oversee the organ procurement organizations. Now, I don't know that that's the best way, the best structure, but ultimately CMS is responsible for making sure that organ procurement organizations are doing their job and keeping them accredited, giving them their contract essentially with the government to run their donation service area. So what has happened is that they've made this final rule and they've used information that isn't very good. And what it's going to do is decertify or eliminate more than
Did y'all hear
half.
her say eliminate? Did you hear what she said?
Eliminate
what?
A third to 2/3 of the organ procurement organizations. Just wipe them out. Just like you don't work. You don't have a contract with the government anymore. You don't have a service area anymore. You don't have the right to go into, donor hospitals, talk to donor families, ask about donation, run the donor registry, run the matching list. Where do patients get organs? Because OPOs work every day to go and do that work and to be
24 hours a day.
24 hours a day. 24 hours a day. And there's no other organization that does it. This is not like, I don't know, a Starbucks where it's like if you put one Starbucks out of business, another Starbucks can come in its place. This isn't making a latte. This is, really difficult, really specialized work that literally only 55 nonprofits in America know how to do. That's it. And if you decide, go ahead.
Yeah.
Ask questions.
2/3 of the 55 OPOs in this country are eliminated, closed down, shut down. How is that going to affect people like my friend Carolyn, who we just saw, who need a heart transplant? What's going to happen to her? And the millions of people on the transplant list, thousands of people on the transplant list.
Yeah, 100,000 people waiting.
Yeah.
And every organ procurement organization has a specific service area. So the
people are on the transplant list right now.
Yeah. It's really powerful too to see those numbers because you see how many are kidney. You see just how many are kidney. But so you've got all of these people waiting, and you've got the system, which is that the OPOs identify, the donor hospitals identify when there's a potential donor. The OPOs go have that relationship. They call their OPO. Their OPO comes in and, assesses the situation, sees if this patient is going to be a potential donor, and does that whole thing. If 2/3 of the area of, here's the other thing. A lot of those OPOs that are on the chopping block, they are the ones that service the largest areas: Los Angeles, New York, Atlanta. They service the largest metropolitan areas, the most diverse metropolitan areas, where a lot of the organs come from. And so I really don't know what's going to happen. It's like, I don't know. It boggles my mind, and that's why it scares me, because it's one of those things where you're like, how could that happen? I mean, patients will be at risk. It will create
patients
so
are going to die. Just say that. People are going to die.
People will die.
Okay, so
People
I
will,
don't want to give away everything we talked about on the program because you went,
it's
really
so
in depth.
good. We went
It's
in
so good.
depth.
Yeah. And I want them to watch it on June the 5th, July the 5th and July the
Fine.
12th. You'll be able to watch the show in its entirety. But in the meantime, I want to know who the bad guys are. I want to know where this all started because we didn't really get into that on the show. So
Yeah.
I want, and you were, I'm just going to say it, you were pretty pissed off about it. You've been fighting this fight for a while,
I
and
I have been pissed.
unfortunately, people weren't really paying attention to you, Tenaya, when you
You know,
really started raising it, raising the roof about it. And now, I mean, this stuff could happen next year, you guys.
and I will say that we knew in the donation space, we knew who was behind all of this propaganda and who was behind all of this policy since about 2018 is when it really they started where Organize really started putting a lot of money, this group called Organize, a lot of money into PR. They built relationships with writers at the New York Times and Washington Post and got them kind of co-opted on their into their messaging and mentality. And they spent a lot of money on lobbying and going into DC and getting legislators to kind of believe what they were selling. And I really think because they started off with this one report called the Bridgespan report, and it was so obviously wrong. Like it used just faulty data. It used like all people who die as potential donors, and we know that all people who die cannot be potential donors. The number of donors is like
Right.
less
Only
than 1%
2%.
because you have to die
Yeah.
in a certain way. But so I think OPOs really thought, oh God, this is so crazy. These people are just not going to get traction. Like this will go away. This will go away. This is going to go away because they're so nuts and they're so inaccurate. And this report is so wrong that we'll just be able to, say, no, that's incorrect and lead people down the path of knowledge. And it didn't work. It didn't work because the story was so good. It was so good because people want a silver bullet solution to why is there a shortage of organs. And there's a lot of reasons why there's a shortage of organs. There's a lot of reasons why there will always be a shortage of organs until we can grow organs, right? That
Okay,
and
so
that
we're live on Facebook and you
that
got
will come.
questions. People have questions. So let's see.
Yes.
Glenda Harris said, who is there speaking up for the OPOs in Congress or Senate?
This is
Who?
a very good question, Glenda. And for a while, no one was. And that was what I was really critical of at first. It was like, you guys, here's the thing. And I will say to the OPO's defense, OPOs are intended to serve local service areas. They have very good relationships with their local Congress people, like with the people at the state level, because that's who does the donor registries. They have really good relationships with their city councils. They have really good relationships with their local, organizations. We really didn't have to have a lot of people up in Congress at Washington, D.C., because most of the donation policies were not being made at the national level. But
Mm.
right now, who's speaking up is the Association of Organ Procurement Organizations, AOPO, we call them AOPO. So AOPO has a new, they have someone that they hired to really be focused on the lobbying and the legislation. They provide a lot of really quality information to the OPOs. They provide talking points right away to all the OPOs. They did a legislative day. Individual OPOs are going to Congress and doing like a Hill Day, a legislative day. So a lot of different OPO CEOs of OPOs have been going every year to talk to their local representatives. The Science in Donation and Transplant, SID and T, it's SID, SID and T.org, SIDNT.org, is an organization that I am a part of. And we are actually have a piece of legislation that we're building out that would sort of divert, be an off ramp for CMS so they wouldn't go headlong into a brick wall. So they are working on policy changes and have a really great newsletter that goes to a lot of different legislators and aides. So I think that there's a lot. There are more people working at the national level and with Congress than there ever have been, and that's very good. And I do think that it's partly because I keep yelling about it, and but I also think that people have finally gotten wise. Like, this isn't just going away. We have to beat them at their own game, kind of thing. George says we live in a climate where tax. I know. Yeah. I know. And that was the thing in 2018. We were like, well, we'll just tell the writers and reporters of these articles, like, oh no, you got it wrong, and we could change their mind. And the thing is that when you're dealing with propaganda, you can't just, disarm the propaganda with facts. Like, here's the facts. And so we've had to really kind of shift the narrative. And it took the OPOs and the donation space a while to do it. I don't know that we're still being effective at it, but at least we're trying.
No, because half the people who are listening to you who had no idea what you were talking about.
I know.
Okay, Gailey wants to know, what is their motivation for this?
Yeah. And Miss Vinnie,
we want to know that too, right?
I know. We want to know that too. And that's the thing. I'm very hesitant because I'm actually working with a reporter, an investigative reporter. And she kept asking me that question. She's like, why? Why are they doing, like, you're saying that they did all this propaganda. You're saying that they blaming the OPOs. You're saying that they created this legislation specifically to decertify 2/3 of the OPOs without using the correct information. And that's not the right thing to do. Why would they do all of this? Why would they do that? It's hard to say, and I'm loath to kind of publicly say this is the reason, because I can't follow the money and look and say, well, this is the reason. But I can say this, that this is also happening on the transplant side, where they have gone after UNOS, the United Network for Organ Sharing. They've blamed UNOS and said that it isn't doing its job right. They've gotten millions of federal dollars pumped into the transplant system, and UNOS is basically being eliminated in favor of about 8 or 9 different for-profit contractors that are going to make millions and millions of dollars doing the same exact work that the nonprofit UNOS did. So I
told you it was about the money, Tenaya. You probably can't say it because you are, like, knee deep in, fighting for this cause, and your name is on the line, but they don't know me. I don't care. It's the money.
We see that UNOS, which could have used more federal dollars, if we had given UNOS like maybe $7 million more dollars, like over the next 3 years, they could have upgraded all kinds of systems, and things could have functioned even better. But UNOS is literally the one still doing the matching. So millions and millions of federal dollars have now gone to high-end, like Oracle. I mean, talk about the highest end federal contractors. These are people who make their money off of beltway stuff, who know nothing about organ donation. They know nothing about the transplant system. They know nothing about matching donors and recipients. They know nothing about our world, and they have millions of dollars to now do the same thing that UNOS was doing and is still doing, because no one can take their place because UNOS is so specialized. So on the OPO side, if you eliminate 2/3 of the nonprofit organizations that are designed to do this, and there are no other nonprofits who can really take it over, I think you open the door to for-profit companies coming in and saying, well, we could run this, we could do this. And what it would take is a change in the NOTA, National Organ Transplant Act, which was started in 40 years ago, which said that these organ procurement organizations have to be nonprofit, because they saw Back in the day, they could see that bringing for-profit money into organ donation and transplant is a bad idea. It is not going to benefit the system, and it's going to not make the public trust the system. But I think that the government is going to be in such chaos that potentially an organized related for-profit is going to sweep in and take over all the contracts of the nonprofit OPOs that get eliminated. That's a very viable, I don't know that they're going to do that, but I know what's being done at the OPTN side on the HRSA. HRSA is I don't know what they are. It's called HRSA. I don't even know what it stands for anymore. But it's another government agency. So CMS is a government agency that oversees the OPOs. HRSA is the government agency that oversees like the transplant side. Those are kept very separate. So what HRSA has done is there are people who are founding members of Organize who now work for HRSA, who are making the policy in HRSA to eliminate UNOS, to make them the bad guys, and to now take all of that money, millions. I'm not even joking. I don't know the number, but over $50 million. I mean, we're talking about good money that's going to be spent on for-profit government contractors who are not going to, they're not.
Probably way more than that.
And it's the patients. Okay. So let's talk about patients for a second, the impact on patients.
That's what I want to talk about.
The OPTN is like the board of it's called OPTN, and it's a board, and it includes surgeons and people on the OPO side, and thank you, Anthony, Health Resources Services Administration, and it includes patients on the OPTN board. The OPTN board is the board that creates policies around transplantation. They're the ones who decide, how the transplant system should work. So if there's issues with how we allocate hearts, or how we, whether or not we expand the territory for livers, that's the OPTN board. And the patient voice has always been essential on that board. And the group of patients, there's about 8 of them, they just resigned from the OPTN board because they have been seeing from the inside everything that HRSA is doing, the craziness that is going on, the money that is being spent on contractors who don't know what they're doing, the ineptitude and chaos. And what they did is they resigned from the board because in order to protest, in order to say to HRSA, what you're doing is not going to help patients. We literally cannot be a part of this anymore. And HRSA's response was like, oh, well, we're sorry that you feel that way, but we think it's important for patients to be on board. And it's like,
but we are the patients. This really ticks me off. We are the patients. We are the recipients. We are the donors, and we didn't know why.
And that's the thing, is that this is so insider baseball. It's so policy and wonkiness. And one of the things you and I talked about, which I don't want to give everything away because you people, you need to watch our show because we go into this. To why is it that patients don't know what's going on right now? And I think, my answer to that is, I don't think that the OPOs, right? I created the volunteer program, the ambassador program. I designed the ambassador program so that people who are personally touched by donation can share their personal stories and inspire others to say yes to being an organ, eye, and tissue donor and register today as an organ donor, right? That's the goal. It isn't to slay the HRSA dragon or the CMS dragon. And so I think we've been trying internally to do that without putting, our transplant recipients and donor families on the line to do that work for us. But I do think that has to change. We need to rise up.
Yeah, because, I was an ambassador for 8 years, and it's already challenging enough to, convince people to say yes to organ donation, particularly people of color, like myself, who already, have mistrust, right, and rightfully so, of the medical profession and
Yes.
organ donation in general. And then, if this kind of information was made public since 2018, nobody's going to want to be
And
on.
the number of people who are pulling themselves off of their donor registries has dramatically increased, specifically after the news story that NPR did, which I'm so frustrated that it was them and they didn't, whatever, about the Kentucky Organ Procurement Organization that
Mm.
supposedly wanted to take organs, but the person didn't actually die. That's everyone's worst fear, is that they're going to take my organs
Yeah,
before I'm
and,
dead.
and he woke up or something like that. That story. Did you
That's the
guys
story.
hear about that? I want to hear what you guys think about this. Does anybody who's watching me know about any of the policy that she's talking about? And have you heard that people are taking themselves off of the donor registration
And
list
the
for
number of
the
people that started to take themselves off the donor registry spiked dramatically after that NPR story, because that NPR story was picked up all over the place. And it wasn't fully true. It wasn't fully true, but the headline was so dramatic and it was so
Yeah,
scary
well,
that people just took themselves off. The other thing that we're seeing is that forever, Donate Life America for 2 decades has been asking the public a question: what is your willingness to be a donor? Your willingness to be a donor. So not are you registered, but are you willing to be a donor? That willingness to be a donor has fluctuated between 90% of Americans to 96% of Americans, right? It's always been that high. 90 to 96% of Americans have said, yeah, we're willing to be a donor. Americans, they believe in donation. It is now for the first time dropped below 90% because of all of this misinformation that is ultimately being generated by one organization in order to
so George
discredit
said
the
they work
organ.
for Ambassadors for Network for Hope. We know the impact. You're seeing people
Yes.
take
Oh
their
my
hands
gosh.
off the
Yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And
Network for Hope is,
Network for Hope, that's in Ohio, right, George? I
no,
think they're in Ohio.
it's the new
Where is
one
it?
that was Kentucky, and then Kentucky merged with
Oh, that's
another
right.
Ohio, and they became Network for Hope. So poor Network for Hope. You guys are in the crosshairs for sure. But it's impacting everyone, because this is really, this is it's scary to people, and it's not true. It was a DCD donation and all of those kinds of things. It wasn't true, but it was a story that was generated really by Organize, ultimately, and put
So
into the public.
organize is the devil. Organize is the devil
I
that's
didn't say it.
causing all of this havoc, right?
I didn't say it,
I
but
said it.
yes, it is. It is, and here's the thing: that the gentleman who started Organize, Greg Siegel, his dad needed a heart transplant, and waited
He
several
has an
years.
access now. Yeah.
He waited several years. He did receive his transplant, and did well. I believe it may be a genetic issue, so Greg himself may need a transplant. And that, you and I know, that's a scary place to be. It is scary to know that you may need a transplant, and we know that people die waiting. We know that there aren't enough organs, even as we increase donation rates more and more and more and more every year. Since 2014, organ donation rates have gone up between 3 to 11% per year for the last 10 years. So organ procurement organizations have been able to increase the number of donors because of DCD donation and other technologies. But we know that it's scary. And so I understand, I have compassion for this man and for his family.
But in his
But
efforts to make a difference, he's actually harming the system. Am I right?
yes, 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 yes. He's blaming the OPOs, and he's creating these policies that are opening the door. He comes from a venture capitalist background. He comes from the idea that business, especially in healthcare, can do things better. And there's a lot of research that says that's not actually true. And I think when you start involving money and business and venture capitalism into especially the organ donation space, it is going to have an unintended consequence. It's going to scare people
Right.
and it's going to push them out of the system. So we're actually going to see more people dying than because people have to trust the system in order for transplantation to work. So I will say, like, I don't know that he's the devil. I think that he is scared, he's passionate, but he's
He has
leading,
wrong information.
yes. He's leading to policies that ultimately are not going to do what he wants, which is to improve the system, which we all want. I go to all these conferences. There's never been a conference I'm at where the leaders of the organ donation and transplant community are like, I think we're doing a good job. Don't worry about it. Everyone on the transplant side, on the donation side, they are always looking for, how do we save more lives? How do we save more lives? How do we save more lives? It's one of
And
the
the
reasons
world is
why I
going to
love
talk too
being in
much.
this community so much. I love it here because it is constantly innovating. No one is sitting back on their laurels and be like, oh, well, we increased donation rates by 4% last year. Good enough. No, it's never good enough because people are dying, people are waiting. And the OPOs are filled with a responsibility, not, to two things, to the donor family and caring for them and providing an opportunity to extend the legacy of someone who has passed away suddenly and tragically, as well as to these transplant recipients who they will never meet. It is such an impassioned group of people, and to see them be demonized, it makes me, you were brought to tears by your friend and the humanity of what she's gone through. I get moved to tears by the humanity of the OPO space that I've been a part of. And just knowing that they're going through this demonization, it makes me so sad and so angry. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm talking
What can
about
we
it.
do? What can we do? A lot of our viewers, own nonprofits, are
Yeah,
actively working every single day to improve the lives of their constituents. We're all recipients, living kidney donors,
yeah.
people who care. And
And
we
and
can't
I
just
come
sit idly by
right.
and just let this happen, right?
We can't.
What can we
And
do?
here's what you and I are doing is we're going to figure out, because I can't, if you're a One Legacy ambassador, I believe that they're still going to plan to do a Hill Day and go to the Capitol, and that will be really important to do. But we have to be able to do things, not just going to DC. And I'm going to AOPO starting on Sunday. They are having their meeting, and I'm going to have a lot more information. So you and I are going to create a place on your website called TENAYA Speaks Policy, and
That's
we
right.
are going to have some updates on this. We are going to have some action items. We are going to create some things that, so at aboutplanttransplantlife.com, when the show airs on July 5th, after that, we'll have a little spot on your website where we can
That's right.
actually have people who are impassioned about this learn more and actually create some actions. Because I kept thinking, well, who am I to organize the patient community? Well, who am I not?
Who are you not,
Who am
honey?
I not?
You
I
are the
created
one.
the ambassadors. I created Donate Life Hollywood. I created the Rose Dedication Program. I created time and time again, I've created opportunities for transplant recipients and donor family members to engage and activate in a very meaningful and important way to transform our system and to save lives. So
That's right.
now let's do it with policy. So I'm not sure what to do yet, but I didn't know what to do with Hollywood, and I figured it out. So we're gonna figure out how to really make sure that patients can stay updated, activated, and involved in
Yeah.
this.
And
Yeah,
so we're just going to ask the Lord to give you wisdom and to give you a strategy, because when you ask, you receive, right?
Yes.
because God cares about this. It is on his heart. If it wasn't on his heart, you wouldn't be here today to talk about it and to sound the alarm with everyone who is involved in organ donation and transplant and raising awareness. We need to know this, right, you guys? And we need to know what we could do to fight back. Faith without works is dead. So we got to put our faith to work
Yeah. And I
and
think
make a
part of it
difference.
is telling our stories again. It goes back to the ambassadors, which is like I created the ambassador program to tell stories. I created Donate Life Hollywood so that Hollywood could tell your stories correctly. And so it goes back to telling those stories and doing it in a concerted way. So you're so funny because you're like, well, let's just put something on my website and I was like, oh my God, that would be so easy. Let's do that. So
Yeah.
I love that. I didn't really know how to activate the patient community, and you have provided me, this incredible partnership to do that. And so I'm excited.
Girl,
I love
Jesus loves you.
George. Thank you.
And George says, we are behind you. Let us know how we can take action. See, there
Yes.
you. And when George says he's behind you, trust me.
Right.
George is the man. He's going to make some
Right.
stuff happen. Right?
We can together. And that's the thing.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I'm excited. You ain't never
I'm
lied. I know.
excited too. I'm excited too.
Cheryl.
And so
Thank you,
we're going to
Cheryl.
do that.
Cheryl.
So I want you all, we're going to start promoting her show. And it's going to air on About Transplant Live television on July the 5th, 2025, and July the 12th. I'm going to run it twice at 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. TENAYA Wallace is going to share some powerful information about policy and what we could do to make a difference. We have to come together, you guys. We can't just sit back and let this happen because, lives depend on it. Right,
And I think
TENAYA?
this is the first thing to do is to watch the show and get the information. That's the first thing. And then, because we've got to be educated and aware before we can take the action. So thank you guys for being here and listening to me rant. Watch the show. We go so deep and we have such a great conversation. And then we're going to build and have more and more action items, because then people will have the knowledge and they'll know how, then they'll be able to take action. So we're building.
Okay, we are building. And while TENAYA is here, you guys, do you have any more questions for her? This is a rare opportunity to get, up close and personal with TENAYA and ask all the questions you want to hear. So now is your chance. Jerry says, thank you for alerting us. Isn't that powerful? Yes, thank you for alerting us. Thank you for all that you do behind the scenes, TENAYA.
Yeah.
You're
welcome.
It truly makes a difference. You may feel like you're not making a difference, but you are. Because you gaining the wisdom and the insight, and the information that we need, and then bringing it to the forefront and letting us know, because we don't get to go to those conferences. They're expensive, number one, right? We don't hear about the conferences, but it takes someone like you that is there up close and personal and hearing the things that we don't hear. See?
Yep.
Like
well, I will keep bringing them back. And yeah, the show is gonna watch the show and then know that there will be action items on About Transplant Life.
That's right. Yeah. And the good news is, even after it airs on cable television and you can watch it live stream anywhere in the world via our live stream, and we're going to give you all that information. Everything that you need to know is on the website at abouttransplantlife.com. So make sure you visit the website, and then it'll live on our YouTube page. So you can share, and always go to About Transplant Life and get, updated information from TENAYA Speaks. I'm so excited. Thank you so much, TENAYA, for being here today. What did you say? Let us know when the info is live on your website. I most certainly will. I just did. July the 5th and July the 12th, Tenaya is going to be on About Transplant Live TV, giving us some valuable information. So don't forget. Thank you, Tenaya.
You're so welcome.
I
Thank
appreciate
you.
you so much. Now, you
Becca.
guys, stay tuned. I got some valuable information to share with you. Don't go away. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you for watching About Transplant Live on Facebook. All right. Please watch About Transplant Live TV every Saturday at 8:30 a.m. and 8:30 p.m. through Pasadena Media's channel on Spectrum Cable TV Channel 32, AT&T Uverse Cable Channel 99, or you can watch it live stream at pasadenamedia.org. Thanks for watching.